Welcome to ReReview, where we watch movies from our past with a perspective from today. Your hosts are Matt, Bobby, and Austin, and we love the films from our youth, so we're taking a look back to see if they still hold up. On this episode, we're discussing Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey. It was released in 1993 and directed by Dwayne Denham, stars Michael J. Fox, Sally Field, and Don Alder. This movie asks, what would you do to get home? Now, this is a fair warning. We're spoiling a 30-year-old movie, so if you haven't seen it, we will be revealing key plot points. It's been a while, I will tell you, since I saw this film, and there's a few moments that I think about that definitely had an effect on me as a kid. One of those was Porcupine in Chance's face. Mm-hmm. I thought about that a lot, and watching it again now, I was always amazed by how they take that out. Now, I know I'm jumping ahead in the film, but I'm thinking of these moments that were like quintessential to my youth, and of course the porcupine damage was something that stood out to me so much. But this is just one of those movies that it makes you appreciate the process, or they'll call it the process, just the goodness that is pet ownership, right? And kind of what you go through and the connections that we can have as animals. We could probably talk a lot about what it means to actually personify animals like humans in this way, which is a different thing entirely. But it made me feel young and old simultaneously, and I'm guessing that's why this film probably did a great job of working for kids when we were younger and for our parents, and now as an adult, to kind of just wrap everything around in a circle of life. Lion King. Matt, you like that, right? See? you know, Matt, when you're looking at it and we get the opening credits where Michael J. Fox is speaking, and you obviously know his voice very well, and they pivot this to make it sound like he's talking about a human being. I was in jail. They had me locked up just to throw you off the scent. Huh?
This all is going in the wrong direction. It's starting off so wrong.
That maybe this is a film about pets. You know, how'd you feel about, you know, the way this movie starts and kicks off?
I mean, I do agree. I definitely think that they definitely tried to play that angle where they were hiding the fact that he was a dog at the very beginning. I guess my initial thought when it started was, I'm not the biggest fan of narration, for the most part. And I do feel like, at least at the beginning, it was used excessively to explain emotions and situations a little bit too much. I think it kind of stopped. I mean, the narration itself basically stopped once they kind of got lost, right? Mm-hmm. But I do think that, you know, to his credit, Michael J. Fox is, you know, obviously we remember him for his work in television and movies and everything else. But I think, you know, between this and Atlantis, he was actually a very capable voice actor.
Sure.
And I think that came across in his narration. I think that he did a really good job of establishing the immaturity of Chance at the beginning. Even just the way that he would speak at the beginning, especially if you contrast this, and again, trying to not jump to the end or whatever, but if you contrast the narration at the beginning versus the end, it's it's deeper and a little bit more sentimental versus what you get at the beginning, which is very much, you know, I could see in one of his 80s, you know, movies, the way that he describes things and everything else. So
sure.
It was an interesting way to start it. I almost kind of wish, I mean, we very much we noticed this where like literally every shot was Chance in this movie, and he was teleporting as he was going.
He teleported very well.
So it very much was established that it was his movie, but it's so weird because when I think back on the moments, like, you know, you were saying in this movie, I remember Shadow. I can almost imagine this, you know, being, you know, done a different direction where it was Shadow's narration at the beginning.
Sure.
But does that give away the possibility of who makes it and who doesn't at the end?
Who makes it and who doesn't? Controversy.
Yeah.
Bobby.
Well, I think the idea was that Chance was the one who changed. He was the one who had the character arc, so therefore he should be like the main character. He was the one who kind of like, he was guarded and he didn't want to open himself or fall in love with humans or any kind of family. And he was saying in the beginning, I want to be free. I want to be free of attachment, free of all this stuff. And it kind of takes the process of being with the other two and having them sacrifice for him and having them go on this journey with him to kind of have him realize, like, okay, I really do want this. I really do want people to love me and protect me and have a family, even though, like, he was clearly, like, hurt in his past life.
Which Shadow, even at the beginning, basically said you have a lot to learn, right?
Yeah.
To indicate that he's Chance has some changing to do. I will flip back because I think it's important to think about, how did you react to this movie when you first saw it as your younger self? Bobby, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really liked it a lot as a kid, but there's a lot to it as a kid to like. I mean, there's, I enjoyed, like, all of the animals. I enjoyed, like, I thought they were really playful, and I thought that they're different enough that they're individually interesting characters. And so, and I'm sure I just bawled my eyes out as a kid in this movie. Although it's not like a Marley and Me overtly sad, which is what I really like about this movie. Spoiler warning, I really like that they all three make it through it, even though they, like, try to trick you and make you think, like, at various times, like, both the cat and Shadow were not going to make it. So I really do like that it wasn't that kind of movie. And then now that I'm older and more cynical and thinking more about the process of movie making and less about, like, just the enjoyment of experiencing the story, I liked it a lot again. I mean, I really like this movie. I can't really explain it. I don't know why. It's just, like, I think it's just fun. And
yeah, I think we could get into the shenanigans that is the creation of this movie, because I think we all agree this seems like an impossible thing to make. Matt, can you tell me about, like, what you think, what you felt in your youth versus today?
Well, for me, I don't think I watched this in theaters. I don't believe. I know that in my memories, I distinctly remember owning the VHS of this movie. Ancient technology, I know. And because it was like the cardboard sleeve style. So, like, I remember sliding it out and popping it. I think I watched this movie, like, all the time as a kid. I mean, I grew up, we had, several dogs growing up. A little bit later in life, we got a cat. So I don't think that it's an impossible thing to say that you make those connections watching it, especially as a kid. Projecting your own experiences and your own pets onto them. I think that because you had distinct personalities between the three, I think that allowed you to kind of, because I think that everyone's kind of had, like, the really nice loyal dog, the really renegade-ish, crazy, dog, and then all cats are
just
sassy.
Cats just being cats. I knew that's where I was going.
Cats are cats. So I think that, growing up, it was easy to do those kind of projections. And then seeing it now, I think even more so, because as an adult, I think one of the things that, you don't think about as a kid, but I think you think about now is, like the dreading the day when you might walk up on your dog laying in bed or whatever, and he doesn't get up again. Right. Just that perpetual terror. Like I remember one time, our cat got out and we didn't realize it, and he had never been out before. And once we realized the next morning, I went around outside trying to find him, calling out his name and everything. Went around the back of the house and I saw him curled up in a ball on the ground, called his name and he didn't move. And I went to go touch him and he didn't move. And, like, I'm just going through all these emotions, and then he pops his head up.
So, good.
So, like,
I was like, I hope the story ends like this.
But, but those are the kind of things that I think that everyone's gone through. I think, going back to the idea of the circle of life is, pets are one of those things that are very much companions, but inevitably their lifespans are much shorter than ours.
Mhm.
And so the thing that you always have to face whenever you do have pets is inevitably the idea of them leaving you. And I think this movie, you know, seeing it as an adult now, I think that they portray that very well. The joys of having a pet and what it means to have a pet,
Mhm.
and the inevitable fears and, you know, the emotions that you could go through. Like, I was a little bit surprised by what was his name, Peter's reaction. He was too old. He was too old.
Peter was ready.
Oh man.
So that part did surprise me a little bit. I kind of expected a little bit more emotion, but at the same time, you know, I think that as a viewer, I had the emotion, so I think it was okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we think about the emotional aspect, part of this is you talk about the narration, and we're being served a lot of this information through their personalities as essentially humans. But I think the challenging thing that Bobby, you mentioned, and we look at the complexity of this, those are some very well trained animals.
Mhm.
And the entire time, I was just imagining the trainer off screen, how they're pulling focus for these animals, how they're doing all the elements to really get them to play the part of. I'm imagining, obviously, this dialogue was done after the fact, right? So did they just have the script and then just trying to time out what they feel like it was going to be like? Or did they maybe have the actors record first so they had an idea of how the beats were going to work? That seems really difficult, especially because we had grizzly bears, mountain lions, a cat that can kill more fish than a human can,
Porcupine.
porcupines,
Skunk.
and oh yes, the skunk.
The
Yeah, I
turkey.
mean, oh okay, the turkey was definitely there too.
that turkey, man. I want to see the sequel with that turkey.
Yeah,
Just on the
all turkey
cover,
movie.
Revenge of the Turkey.
Oh, it'd be so good. It's hard not to be impressed because it felt, if I wouldn't say it felt visceral, it felt so much to me watching all these animals. Like I felt like I could reach out and touch all of the dogs and the cat, and just seeing how well and how well behaved I guess they all were to play their part. I mean, Chance being the puppy who would stumble and was so energetic, and all of that just worked so friggin' well. I don't know, I found it impressive.
Oh yeah, no, when he it's one of those things where, like, I don't know how much was intentional versus how much was improvised based off what happened.
Yeah.
So like, you know, like you're saying, like with Chance, him hitting the tree and him like falling into the hole or whatever, and stumbling, like plays so well into his character that I'm like, did that just happen? And like, oh well, that was such a chance thing to happen. We're gonna leave that in there. Or like, I just can't believe that they could have a dog intentionally run into a tree. Like,
Yeah.
that would be a
Right.
hell of a thing. So I imagine it must have happened. My guess is they probably very much had like an outline of what they were going to happen, since obviously it was based off of a book. And I feel like maybe they had that outline and then they played to it, and they probably let the Michael J. Fox, Sally Field, and Don Ameche. I feel like they probably let them kind of have the general what they're supposed to say, but then just kind of flex with whatever scene. Because I feel like there's probably shots that the director was like, I like that shot. You know, there was a good reaction or something. Like, I'm sure that the scene I remember thinking of was Sassy biting Chance's lip, trying to remove the porcupine. Like, I don't know how you could potentially get a dog to allow that to happen.
Right.
Or to get a cat to intentionally to do that. So I feel like that probably just happened. Like, and then they just ran with it. And I feel like that probably happened quite a few times. And then they had the actors just kind of fill in the gaps that were there.
Sure.
I also like the element of, I'm thinking how they get A, hire these three animals, and then B, make sure that they would be familiar and good with each other.
Well, I personally don't think it was three. I think they had many, like, that looked very, very similar, but they had like specific skills. Like, this one is good at doing this certain thing, and this one is good at doing this thing. And then it just take after take after take, and then edit together what little chunk works. And then it's just a puzzle and editing. That's the only way I see it happening. Like, I don't think you can get like an animal to do like one thing, then another thing, then another thing. I think they do this thing, and then it's like cutaway reaction shot, and then they do another thing, and then I think it's just a massive puzzle and editing and all that. I mean, I worked on a movie with some animals once, and they didn't do nearly as much as in this movie, obviously, but it's pretty like all consuming when you have an animal there. So basically, like there was a scene where this girl was like crying over her hurt dog, and so the dog had to like lay his head on the table, and so the trainer was just off camera saying, "Head down, head down, head down, head down, head down, Muffy, head down, Muffy," and then the dog would kind of come up just a little bit, and then all the crew would be like, "Oh no!" And then the dog would like bring his head back down again and be like, but it's really hard to have everything else work as a process because the animals take everything over. Like none of the sound is going to be usable because the trainer is just constantly talking, and it's got to be like everything arranged around what makes the animals comfortable, and then there's going to be like a ton of pre-work to be done. Like they'd have to mock up the set, like what are the sounds, is the shot going to be at the daytime, at nighttime? Like they have to create all that so that the animal gets comfortable with this environment beforehand, and then they do it all a whole bunch of times, and then they go on to the real life place, and then they go, okay, do what you've done a bunch of times before, and they try to copy it again, and it's just like a process.
Well, yeah, it's weird to think about because they're going over some really challenging terrain as animals that a lot of the times I was going like, oh, I hope they don't get hurt with what they're doing. And, we can think of certain parts of the story. Are we sure Sassy survived that waterfall? I'm a little bit sus on that.
Stunt cat.
The fact that cat survived, and we have these beats in the story. I think we all agreed that it's very linear, but we have clearly their focus is to go home, but we have the things like the gentleman who saves Sassy, or the little girl who needs help being found because her parents are terrible and like lost her in the woods in her pajamas. Like I was like, what just happened here? She is way too like in her bedtime clothes that they lost this poor little girl.
She had a nice bed of soft moss to sleep in.
Let's not assume things, okay? For all we know, this little kid threw a temper tantrum and ran away on her own because she didn't get her juice box that night. Don't start looking at the parents.
That's
like they're to blame.
More likely the story.
But I mean, it was there to reinforce, obviously, Shadow and what he is as a protector. But did those? How did you feel about those moments that they kind of put in there with these other characters that really kind of represented what stranger danger, right?
It's funny because I had forgotten about both of them. Like I had remembered Sassy falling down the waterfall, but for some reason in my mind, I felt like the dogs found her in the mud. I had forgotten that she was just randomly found by some eagle watcher dude who has a cabin in the middle of some part of California somewhere. I think that the interesting thing about them putting those two portions in there, probably more so the little kid portion than the than with the, I don't know what you want to call them,
I don't even know what to call him.
Adventurer.
I was going to say hermit.
Yeah, he might be. I don't want to know why he's hiding in the woods by himself. But I feel like with the girl thing, I think that it did. I think it was kind of a callback to when Shadow was explaining the nature of dogs to Chance, that they are man's best friend, and because he always would phrase ownership differently than I think humans would. Shadow wasn't Peter's dog. Peter was Shadow's human, basically, right? Like that. That's the way he kind of the way he kind of saw things. And so, which I actually really enjoyed that moment. It was actually kind of a slightly cinematic moment with like the sunset, and he looked like the wise sage, looking off into the sunset or whatever, kind of explaining the nature of dogs. And so I feel like that was kind of showing what they actually kind of work. Because I feel like if they had just stayed completely linear, where it was literally them just trekking, I feel like those moments probably wouldn't have played in as much. And you might have lost something along the way. And maybe it might have dampened Chance's arc a little bit. So I think that it worked pretty well. I do think that it was kind of weird because I think, like Bobby said, I don't really have a great sense of geography in this. So I'm like, where did they come from? Like, how lost was she? Because like, I get the guy in the cabin for the most part, but the way I interpreted this is like, this is in the middle of nowhere. I was like, where did she come from? Where did they come from?
Animated map to like guide us along the way, like Indiana Jones or like follow the bouncing dog or something. Some kind of
some like paw prints.
That actually would have been really good. We eventually get to, which I think has an amazing bit of animal puppetry, is the breakout scene from the animal shelter. And Sassy unlocks a gate in a way that was so impressive to me. I was like, how in the hell did they train a cat to do that?
That was pretty wild.
But I actually do believe it, because now at the age of social media, you see all the cats who jump up and turn doorknobs with their paws or whatever. Like I've seen ones that have actually turned locks, deadbolts or whatever. So I do believe it, but that was still pretty impressive the way that, I mean, I can only imagine it was like the Scott Pilgrim, took 34 takes, to get it.
Sure.
If they were like, we did that in 3 takes, I'd be like, liar. No way.
That cat did make it look effortless.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
So we have our family who needs their pets. Kids are upset. Can't believe you moved me to San Francisco and we lose our animals. The journey to get them back. We get my concern for Sassy, and then we get our epic moment with Shadow, which is they're so close to home, and he falls into a mud pit. Bobby, you said Shadow survives. Matt, did Shadow survive?
Oh no, you're going down that conversation. It was all a dream.
Well, the dog is called Shadow.
Oh, he's accepting the darkness.
Conspiracy theory.
We need to rewind the podcast back to where Bobby was like, they all survived. I'm so happy it went that way.
It's hard because that moment happens in the pit and Shadow looks done for, right? But then the conversation they have is really interesting, because if anyone had the wherewithal to push through, it was Shadow. And I felt there was a weird pivot in the character in terms of, first he says his leg is hurt, cool. But then he tries to get up the muddy side of the pit and his legs seem to be working. But it was such a change. He was in such a quick defeat to me, where he was just like, nope, this is as far as I could go. And I went, wait a second, like just a moment ago you went through that gate, like we're almost there. What just happened?
They needed Chance to step up. That's what happened.
Well, no, but I mean, I do see, like, it almost felt like there was, it's the kind of moment that if these were humans or whatever, it would be that moment where, like, the older soldier or whatever, like, gets his leg all messed up or whatever. And it was like, but you guys need to go. If you guys don't go, you're not going to make it. Leave me behind. It's all right. Like, I feel like they didn't have that moment or that trigger that would at least imply that, right? Like, it's not like you saw like the family in the car about to drive away. Yeah. Right. Like some moment like that'd be like, you just need to go, like, leave me. It's fine. I do feel like it did kind of flip a little bit. He went from, I have to see Peter to like,
I guess it's time. And then Peter felt the same way.
Yeah. I guess they're like, like, yep.
So we eventually get to our quintessential moment. They do make it home, which is very lovely. Everyone else in the internet could have their conversations about whether or not Shadow died, but we get the nice resolution that Bobby you're looking for. So I think I can flip this to the question we always ask, and I'll start with you, Bobby. You recommending this one?
Yeah, I like this movie a lot, actually. I wasn't expecting it. I thought I was going to be a little bit bored through it, to be honest, but I don't know. There's something about how like innocent and pure it seems that like really like I just really liked it a lot. I mean, I liked the scenery, the national park prettiness of it.
Were gorgeous.
I liked the music. I thought the animals were pretty good. I liked them all. I thought it was a really fun movie, and it wasn't one of those like overt tearjerker type of things. So I think it's good family fun. I liked it a lot.
Matt?
I agree. I think that, I kind of went into this thinking that I wasn't going to enjoy it as much as I did. 'Cause it has probably been about 20-ish years since I probably have seen it. So I kind of was afraid I was going to have the rose tinted glasses.
Mhm.
But watching it again, I think that as a movie, it holds up. Or like, it's simple. It's definitely
Mhm.
not a complex movie. It's not going to really make you think about too much. But I think that strangely enough, the acting of the animals and the way that they use the voices and everything worked really well. I think the pacing, managed itself really well. It never dragged.
We're only like a year and a half away from like babe technology. They could have done the mouths and all that kind of stuff, and I
No.
like that they didn't.
Yeah. I'm okay with the telepathy.
Yeah, that made me feel sick when you just said that, Bobby.
Yeah. No,
They could have done some animation mouth thing.
Oh,
I'm
no.
glad they didn't.
Yeah, no, as much as I enjoyed the movie Hocus Pocus, that's the one thing that kind of took me out of it was the bad animation of the cat mouth every once in a while. No, this was good as is. Yeah, I think that people should watch it. I think that if you haven't seen it, it's something worth watching with your family. Or if you just have pets. I don't think you even have to have family. If you have a dog, a cat, a goldfish, whatever.
Wait, are you
Watch
saying
it.
pets aren't family? I see.
We're gonna do that battle,
that's
huh?
really good. Yeah, that's for me, I feel like I thought we were walking into a guaranteed tearjerker for some reason. I probably put this in line with some other movies that will make us cry if we ever watch them. But I was pleasantly surprised that this was not one of those. Oh, don't name any of them,
I mean,
Bobby.
I thought it was emotional. Like it wasn't. I wasn't just sitting here just dead the entire time. I got some feels out of it.
Oh, absolutely. But, when I think of there's other certain films where you get attached to certain animals that do not make it.
For
and
sure,
you end up on the ground in a, curled fetal position
really
because you're
liked-
crying on the inside.
I really liked that this movie wasn't that.
Yeah. So that does go a long way. And I think it makes it really perfect for exactly what you both described. Getting together with family and just kind of connecting, because it helps you connect to each other. But, animals, our connection that we have with them is just unreal and amazing. And how good that can be, I think, is definitely shown off very, very well in this film. And I agree. I'm so glad that they didn't have fake mouths, because it made them feel like these were the pets that you had through your life. And then that alone is worth so much. So absolutely, all of us are recommending, please see this ASAP if you haven't seen it. And if you have, it's definitely something to put on again. As always, thank you for listening. And remember, cats rule and dogs drool.